So towards the end of 2018, I made a video that shows how to install Windows on a compatible Chromebook, and the video was received very well. But after lots of comments and questions and things like that, I realized that there were a lot of things that I had missed because of some preconceived notions that I had as far as who my audience for that video would be. So I ended up making a couple of follow-up videos to that, and understandably, I guess, that frustrated some people as well. So I've taken all of the information that I've acquired over the course of the past almost year, and I want to take all that information and put that in this new video where I've got everything outlined step by step, written out already, and I plan to follow that guideline that I've created essentially for myself to create timestamps for each step along the way so that you can have text to follow along with the video. And all of those timestamps will be below in the description. So hopefully you'll follow me along with this and I can have a much better, more concise video for anybody who's looking to install Windows on a Chromebook. Okay, so step one is, and I can't emphasize this enough, step one is watch this video in its entirety before you attempt this on your own Chromebook. There may be things that you think you know that you don't know. There may be things that you think you've got figured out that you don't. And it's really, really important that not only that you watch this video in its entirety before you attempt this, but you also look over the description. The description is going to have a lot of links and a lot of information that I'm going to go over in this video, but there may be things in the description that I add later or I have to correct or whatever the case may be. So it's very, very important that, again, you watch this video in its entirety and you read through the description to make sure you fully understand what you're getting yourself into. Step two is making sure that your Chromebook is compatible. The first thing is you need to know if you've got an Intel-based Chromebook. That's a Chromebook with an Intel processor. You have to have an Intel-based Chromebook for this to work. If you've got an ARM processor, this won't work. This tutorial is not for you. If you want to watch, cool. If not, thanks for stopping by. So in order to figure out what processor your Chromebook has, what you're going to need to do is flip your Chromebook over. On the bottom, there will be a sticker that's got a bunch of information on there, and some of that information will be the exact year, make, and model of your Chromebook. And you need to find that, and there's going to be bits of information kind of all over that sticker. As you can see on mine, there's two different places where there are bits of information about the exact make and model of my Chromebook. Once you've figured out the exact make and model of your Chromebook, you're going to need to go over to Google and search for the exact make and model of your Chromebook to figure out what the specs are. Now you can see on mine that my Chromebook has a 2995U Intel processor. So now that we have that figured out, the next thing we need to do is go over to coolstar.org. Okay, so once you've gone to coolstar.org, what you're going to want to do is click on the link that says Chromebooks. From there, you're going to see a couple of different options here, but we're going to scroll down to where it says install Windows 8.1 or 10, and then we're going to click install right here. At this point, you're going to select the manufacturer of your Chromebook. In my case, I've got an Acer, so I'm going to click that, and then I'll click next. Now, this is the important part where you figured out in the previous part of this step what processor you've got. Now, like I said, I've got a 2995U, so I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to click next. And I'll scroll back up, and this is the Acer C720. There was a P version that had the same specs, but with a touchscreen, I believe. But this is my Chromebook, so I'm going to click that. I'm going to click next. Now, all of this shows up, which is a good sign. So if you went through all those steps and you found your Chromebook with your processor and everything is good to go, then great, you can move on to the next step. But if your Chromebook isn't listed, if you can't find your Chromebook with your processor, then your Chromebook is not compatible with this process. Again, if you want to keep watching, great. If not, thanks for stopping by. So one other thing regarding your Chromebook and the necessary specs to make this work. If your Chromebook has a supported Intel processor, that's great, but you need to make sure that per Microsoft's requirements that you've got at least 32 gigs of hard drive space available. Okay, so I guess that last part wasn't entirely true. You can get away with 20 gigs to install Windows 10, but I don't think Chromebooks make a 20 gig version. They make like 16, 32, 64, you know, the normal progression there. So if you've got a 16 gig Chromebook, this won't work. You will need a 32 gig Chromebook for this to work effectively. You theoretically could get away with having 16 gigs of hard drive space, but that the install itself, just the basic install, will take up nearly all of that, which won't leave you any room to install any programs, any games, any updates. This will not work if you've got a 16 gig hard drive. You need at least 32 gigs in order to make this work effectively. So now that we know that our Chromebook is compatible, in this step, we're going to gather all of the things that we need to make all of this happen. Obviously, we need a supported Chromebook. We need the charging cable or the power cable for your Chromebook. You're gonna need internet access. Wired or wireless is fine, just as long as your Chromebook can connect to the internet. You're also going to need a USB mouse and a USB keyboard. Neither your trackpad or your built-in Chromebook keyboard will work during this process, so having an external mouse and keyboard will be very important to making this work as well. You're also going to need a USB stick that has Windows on it. Lastly, you're going to need a blank or an empty USB drive to make a backup of your Chromebook's firmware in case something goes wrong or you want to go back to stock. Okay, so in order to create a bootable Windows 10 USB, the first thing you're going to need to do is plug your empty USB drive into your computer, and keep in mind that that drive needs to be at least 8 gigabytes. No, 4 won't work. It needs to be at least 8 gigs, and when you go through this process, you're going to lose everything that's on that USB drive. So once you've plugged that in, you're going to open up your favorite browser, and you're going to look for download Windows 10. And the Microsoft website here should be the first thing that comes up. So you're going to go ahead and click on that. And you've got some options here where you can either click Update Now or download the tool now. And we're going to download that tool. So we'll click that. And then once it's done, we can go ahead and open it up. And then we're going to go through a bit of a process here to create that bootable USB device. So the first thing that it's going to say is there's some terms of service, that sort of thing. Read through that, and if you accept it, then go ahead and click Accept. So the next thing it's going to ask is, do you want to upgrade your current PC, or do you want to create installation media? We're going to go ahead and click on Create Installation Media, and we'll click Next. Now by default, where it says use recommended options for this PC, that's going to be checked by default. It should be fine, but what you want to make sure is that the language is correct, the edition is Windows 10, and that the architecture is 64-bit. I say that because 32-bit won't work. So go ahead and make sure that all of this is correct, and then click Next. Choose which media to use. Now this is an option where you can either download an ISO file to save on your computer, or you can just have this program automatically create the installation media on the USB device that you've already plugged in. So we're going to say use USB flash drive, and right here again it says it needs to be at least 8 gigabytes. That's very, very important. So once we've established that, we'll go ahead and click Next. Here you should see any USB drives that you've got plugged in. I don't want to use the Seagate expansion drive. That's an 8 terabyte drive. I don't want to do that. I do know that this ESD-USB drive is my 8 gig drive. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next there. And now it's going to go through this process of getting everything ready. It'll download everything that it needs to download. It will create the USB or create the bootable USB the way it needs to be created, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, and that's all you need to do in order to create a bootable Windows USB drive. Okay guys, so in this step, we're actually going to start modifying our Chromebook so that we can tell it to boot from a USB device and actually support a UEFI operating system, that sort of thing. And the first thing we're going to have to do is put the Chromebook in developer mode. Now, the thing to note about this is when you do this, you're going to lose anything that's not backed up on your Chromebook. So make sure that everything on here is backed up to your satisfaction before you move on to this step. Before you move on to this step, make sure that your Chromebook is plugged in. This is going to take a while, and you don't want to rely on battery power for this process. If you lose power during this process because you're not plugged in, there's a chance that things could go wrong. You may break your device, that sort of thing. So make sure that you're plugged in to power. Also, this is a good time to gather your mouse and keyboard and get those plugged in. Right now, I don't have an extra mouse laying around. Well, I do. I've got this one, but I've managed to lose the little USB dongle. So I'm just going to have to use a lot of the tab key to get to where I need to be. Just know that there's a good chance that your keyboard and your trackpad on your Chromebook won't work. So you'll want to make sure that you do have a USB mouse and keyboard plugged in, a keyboard at the very, very least. So if we go over to the Chromebook here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to power it off. You can do this any number of ways. I'm just going to do a normal power off here, and then once it reboots, or once it shuts off all the way rather, I'm going to hit the power button to obviously turn it back on, and then on my keyboard I'm going to start pressing Control D repeatedly to get it into developer mode, or to get that process started. So I'll press the power button. There we go. This is fine. Again, you can press Control D there. And here it's going to say, do you want to turn OS verification off? The answer to that is yes. So you're going to press Enter. So now it says OS verification is off. That's fine. We can press Control D here again, and that will get us into the next step here, where it's actually going to start putting the Chromebook into developer mode. Here up at the top left, you can see it says starting in 30 seconds. This is to give you some time to change your mind. Unfortunately, there is no way to skip this 30-second delay that I'm aware of. There may be other people that know how. I don't, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to hang out and we're going to let it do its thing. And then it's going to go through a process, and across the top of the screen there, you'll start seeing a progress bar letting you know where you are in that whole process of turning on developer mode. And as I said that, here you go. We're 5 seconds in right there, and the little arrow, the little caret thing there, will start taking up more of that screen, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so at this point, we're pretty close to being done with it going into developer mode. And once it's done, it should reboot at that point and kind of take us through that setup process again. So we'll hang out for just a few seconds, and when we get to that point, we'll pick it up from there. So here it's saying, hey, developer mode is still turned off. This gives you an opportunity to turn that back on and then kind of go back through that OS verification process. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave OS verification off. That's how we're going to keep developer mode on. And there, when you hear that double beep, it means that it's about ready to go over to the kind of the sign-in process, so we can get the next part of the process started here. So we'll go ahead and there we go. Now we're seeing Chrome, so that's good. Now in this step, it's going to act like a brand new Chromebook at this point, which is good. It means that the OS verification / developer mode thing worked. So now what we need to do is just go through enough of the setup process to get to where we've got Wi-Fi. And that's it. We don't have to log into an account. We don't have to do anything other than get Wi-Fi set up, and then we'll log into a guest account. So we'll go ahead and click OK, let's go. Language for me is fine right there. So we'll go ahead and we'll go there. Oops. Yep, that's fine. Guess maybe I'll just do it this way. There we go. So here are the options that we have for Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and sign in here, and hopefully that worked. There we go. This is fine. This is normal Google sign-in stuff. So if you've already agreed to it once, you're probably going to agree to it again. Not that it matters, because we're going to completely wipe out Chrome OS here. So it's going to check for updates. Again, this doesn't matter. So here's where it's asking us to sign into our Chromebook. Again, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to click Browse as Guest. Okay, so now that we're logged in as a guest, the next thing we need to do is open a terminal. So we're going to go ahead and actually, to do that, we're going to open Chrome. And then we're going to press Control-Alt-T. And then we get Crush. And Crush is Chrome Terminal. In order to get to the next step, we actually need to type in a command, and that command is shell. And we'll press Enter or Return. Now, what we're seeing here is what we want to see. If we get Kronos at localhost, that's what we want to see. If for some reason you get something that says shell isn't a recognized command, or something about shell not being a recognized command, something with some of that verbiage in it, it means you're not in developer mode. If you get that and you're not in developer mode, you need to take a step back and make sure that you've got developer mode enabled. So that's where we are right now, is exactly where we want to be. So the next thing we're going to do is actually download a shell script, and then we're going to execute it. But we're going to do all of that with one command. And that command is cd, there we go, space tilde, not dash, not minus, not hyphen, it's tilde, semicolon, curl minus capital L minus capital O. Hang it. There we go. It just looked weird at the angle that I'm sitting here looking at everything. So then we're going to do https://coolstar.org/setup-firmware.sh, and we'll do ampersand space sudo bash setup-firmware.sh. So the first part of the command, the cd, is saying go to the home directory. Then at that point, we're going to use the curl command. And in fact, we may run into a bit of an issue here. We're going to use the curl command to download the setup-firmware.sh file from the coolstar.org website or server. And then once that's done, then we're going to use root to run that shell script that we've downloaded. Now, here's the thing about this. There's a good chance that this isn't going to work. And that's because I forgot that we don't have curl enabled. Oh, I guess we do. I've run into situations in the past where curl wasn't enabled. And in that case, you've got to run a command to install curl, but I may be misthinking about that. So if this works, great. If not, you may have to install curl. So just know that there's the possibility that you may have to do that additional step. So let's take a look at this screen real quick here. Starting at the top, is saying that we're using Chrome OS firmware utility script dated 2019 January 4th by Mr. Chromebox and Coolstar. I actually follow Coolstar on Twitter. I don't know why I don't follow Mr. Chromebox, but below that it tells us what our device is. In my case, I have an Acer C720. That's the Peppy version. It's got an Intel Haswell processor in it. It's got the stock Chrome OS on it for the firmware. And right below that it says FWWP, and that's for Firmware Write Protect. Now, there's a chance that and right now it says mine is disabled. If yours says enabled, this may not work. In my case, I had a firmware write protect screw that I had to remove. You may have to do the same with yours, but that will all be dependent upon what kind of Chromebook you've got. If you think you might have a write protect screw, make sure that you Google where the write protect screw for your device is. There are a lot of screws in there, and there's only one write protect screw, so you want to make sure that you get the right one. So hopefully you don't have that issue, and you can just move on to the next step, which is going to be pressing 1, and that will be to install and update the full firmware ROM, or full ROM firmware. So we're going to go ahead and press 1, and then we're going to press enter. Now, this is the standard disclaimer saying, hey, if you do this, you may break your device. It may be unrecoverable. Do this at your own discretion. I'm fully aware of that. I've done this, honestly, more than a dozen times on this specific device. I'm okay with that, so I'm going to press yes. And then it says, after flashing a UEFI firmware, you'll need to install a UEFI compatible operating system. And in this case, that would be Windows 10. That's what we're here for. You can also do Windows 8.1. But we're going to just focus on Windows 10 here. And this is just saying, are you sure? Yep, sure am. Now, the next thing it's asking is, do you want to create a backup of your firmware? The answer to this should always, always, always be yes. I received a comment on my previous video in this topic saying that this guy didn't have to do that he said no, and this was able to go out and find everything that he needed, and he was able to restore his Chromebook that way. And while that's all well and good, there's always the chance that there may not be a backup of your firmware. It may be corrupted, you may have issues, you may not have internet. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. So you always want to make sure that you run a backup of your firmware. In order to do that, you're going to need a USB drive. This is the USB drive that I always use. This is a 2 gig drive, and I think I've got probably a dozen different firmware backups on here. So the firmware backups are very, very small, less than a megabyte each. So I've got several of them on here. I use this for a few different things. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and then I'm going to say yes, and to go ahead. So yes, to create a backup rather. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and I'll say yes and enter. And then it's saying connect the USB device that you want to use and press enter. Of course, now it's showing that I've got a Sony Storage Media 1.9 gigabyte drive installed. That's the one I just plugged in. That's number 1 here. So I'm going to go ahead and press that and press enter. And just that quickly, it backed up and stored the firmware on that drive. So I can remove the USB stick and press enter. So now it's going through the process of downloading the firmware, and once it's done that, then it will go ahead and install said firmware. Like it says there, it could take a minute, minute and a half to go ahead and do that. So we'll just go ahead and wait, and then we'll just move on from there. Okay, so just like that, we're good to go. It should have installed the firmware like we expected it to. It says that it has installed / updated. That's good. So now we can press enter to return to the main menu. So we'll go ahead and do that. The next thing that we want to do here is actually power off. Or reboot. Either one will really be fine at this point. But I tell you what, let's go ahead and reboot. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and plug in our Windows 10 USB drive. So we'll go ahead and plug that in like so, and then we'll press R to reboot, and then we'll press enter. Now, if all goes well, we should theoretically get a screen that has the little bunny on it, and then it should give us the little Windows spinny thing. If not, then we'll take a look at that. But I think we're going to be good to go here with this. Okay, perfect. So now we're getting the Windows loading dial there. Now we're going into the Windows setup screen here. So we're going to go ahead and press, we'll go down here. Oh, right, my mouse doesn't work. So we'll go ahead and tab down to next, and then we'll click install now. So now it says setup is starting. That's good. We like to see that. Definitely headed on the right track here. Okay, so you will obviously need a Windows 10 key to make this work and get all of the updates, that sort of thing. You get a grace period of like a week or whatever, so you can kind of get things set up and whatnot. But at some point, you will want to enter a Windows 10 key. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't have a key, and I'll press enter. So then it's going to ask, what version of Windows 10 do I want to install? Choose the one that you've got a key for. I'm going to say Pro N. Pro would have been fine, but I understand that N has a bunch of stuff not installed. It's kind of a light version, if I'm correct there. I may be wrong. If I am wrong, definitely let me know in the comments, but I'm going to go with Windows 10 Pro N. Of course, I accept the license terms there, so I'll click Next. We're going to do a custom install here. That's going to give us the chance to go through and delete a bunch of partitions and that sort of thing. And that's that part, I'll be honest, is a bit tedious. As it's being a bit too tedious, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my wireless mouse over here and see if, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and just delete through this stuff real quick. You will want to delete all of the partitions that are on here. And that way you'll get, drive 0 unallocated space will be the full amount of however big the hard drive in your Chromebook is. So I'm just going to go through and delete these real quick. Okay, so now we have all of our partitions deleted. We've got one just massive hard drive partition there. So we'll go ahead and just click Next. You could partition that out if you wanted to do like a multi-boot or something like that, which I've covered in another video. But make sure that you've got the partition size that you need for Windows to install, however you want to set that up. For the sake of this video though, I did want to make it simple and just use the entire partition for the Windows install. So we'll go ahead and let this just sit for a while. It's going to go through the process of copying everything, installing everything, going through all of that. So once that's done, we'll go ahead and come back and we'll get into Windows. Okay, so I went ahead and rebooted again. I had a little glitch with my camera here, so I may have lost a little bit of footage there, but it was just going through that initial setup. You didn't really miss anything there. Now we're back to the setup process where it's asking me where I am, that sort of thing. So we're going to go ahead. Oops. I'm going to say United States. Is this the right keyboard layout? We'll say US. I don't want to add a second keyboard, so that's fine. We'll go ahead and click Skip. So go ahead and connect. Get a Wi-Fi connection set up here so that we can do things like updates and that sort of thing. We'll click Next. So of course now it's going to go through some setup, and that's fine. Nothing too bad going on there. So we'll hang out and we'll wait for it to get us to the next step. Okay, so now it's asking, how do I want to use this? This is going to be for personal use. That may be different for you, probably not in this case, but we're going to say personal use. Click Next. I want to use an offline account. There are lots of reasons for that. You can set this part up however you'd like. I just always use an offline account for my own personal reasons. So click Offline. And we're going to say DB Tech. Click Enter. I'm not going to put in a password. That's fine. You probably will want to, just for the sake of your own security. But I do so much different stuff with this. Doesn't matter for me. I don't want to use Cortana. So we'll say no. So I'm going to go ahead and turn all of these different privacy things off, because I don't want Microsoft to be tracking. Basically, I want Microsoft Basically, I'm turning all of this stuff off because I want Microsoft to track the least amount of me as possible. So I'll click, after I've got all that turned off, I'll click Accept. Cool. Again, this is more of just the initial setup process. Luckily, you've only got to do this once, because I can't imagine having to do this all of the time. So we just do this once. It's tedious, but it gets the job done. So we'll hang out for another minute and let it do its thing. Okay, so now we're on our desktop, and that's basically where we want to be. You'll notice though that like my trackpad still doesn't work, that sort of thing. So in order to do that, we're going to move on to the next step, which is downloading all of the appropriate drivers. Okay guys, so let's say you go through this whole process, you do all of you put the script in, you do everything just like I've shown in this video, but instead of Windows loading up and starting the install process, let's say you get a screen like this. This happens fairly regularly. I've had a lot of people complain about it. I've had a lot of people leave comments asking, what do I do? How do I fix this? And I've made follow-up videos per my last video, but I want to make sure I include it in this video. So what we're going to do here is actually just shut off our Chromebook. We're going to press the power button and shut it off. So we're going to power the Chromebook back on just like normal, but as soon as we tap the power button, we're going to start tapping the escape button to get us into basically the BIOS, if you will. So we'll do that, and I'll start tapping the escape button here. All right, so then what we want to do is actually go down to the boot manager, and we want to tell it to boot from the USB device. And that should theoretically work. If it doesn't, then I'll show the next thing that we can do here. Again, we'll power on and start tapping escape. Okay, so once you're in the BIOS or the firmware, whatever you want to call it here, you're going to scroll down to where it says Boot Maintenance Manager, and then you'll press Enter. Then you're going to go down to where it says Boot from File, and press Enter. Then you're going to look through these, and you'll notice that a lot of these say SATA in them, but you're going to go down to the one down here that says USB. And then you'll go into EFI, and then Boot, and then Boot x64.efi. Okay guys, so this should be the last step, and what we're going to do here is actually download all of the drivers that we're going to need to make things like audio and keyboard and trackpad and all those kind of things work. I do have my mouse and keyboard, my external USB mouse and keyboard plugged in for this, just because it's going to make life a lot easier, because we're going to have to open up a browser, navigate to a website, and download some stuff. So let's go over to the Chromebook here, and we'll take a look at the coolstar.org website again. On this page, this will be linked in the description. We're going to click down here where it says Chromebooks, and we're going to go through that same process that we went through before. We're going to go to Windows Install. We're going to select our respective manufacturer and processor and all that kind of stuff. So again, I've got an Acer. I'm going to click Next. I know I've got the 2955U, so I'll go ahead and click that, and I'll click Next, and then I'll scroll back up, and there's the Acer C720. That, again, that's the one I've got. You're going to select the stuff for your specific Chromebook here, and I'll click Next. And then here we can see that there are some things like the install rapid storage technology driver. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to pop that open in a new window. And then we'll come over here. We'll just click right there, and we'll click I accept. That's not helpful. Come on, Microsoft. There it goes. So we'll click save. And then we can come back over to here, and we can say we've got a keyboard remap utility. Basically, this is going to help you fix your F keys. Like at the top of mine don't say F keys, but that's basically what they are. This will give you a chance to remap a lot of that to be more useful for you. I was talking to somebody via comments the other day, and they said that their F12 put their Chromebook to sleep or something. So you want to make sure that you get the right keys set up using this keyboard remapper. And maybe there's that. So we're going to open that in a new link as well. Just like before, we're going to click save. Then we're going to come down. We're just going to download all of these different drivers that are available for our Chromebook so that we make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. And looks like the last one I've got is the Amtel, this one I actually don't need to do. This is the touchscreen driver, and with me just having the basic C720, not the 720p, I actually don't have a touchscreen, so I'm not going to worry about this. What I am going to do, though, is go to my downloads folder, and here you can see that I've got 3 different files here. The remapper, the touchpad, and that first driver that we installed. So I'm just going to start here with touchpad. I'll click install and install, and we'll go through the process on all of these to make sure we get all of the drivers installed properly. And now Now my touchpad works, so that's a good sign. We'll go ahead and install the key remapper. I may or may not use this, but it's good to have just in case I want it. And that's done. And then this one we'll go ahead and extract. That's fine. Oops. And we'll double click the setup there. We'll go through this process and then we should be done. So now, of course, with this one, you can restart now if you'd like. You can restart later, whatever the case may be. I'm going to say later. I'll click finish. I'm going to close a bunch of this stuff. Yep. Because I'm done downloading everything that I need from the Coolstar website. Now, there may be some other things that may not work properly or all of the way until you run Windows updates. And of course, you can do that, if I can find my keyboard here, by clicking the Windows key. Oh, there it was. There we go. And then check for updates. There we go. And it looks like it has installed updates recently, so we should be good to go. Okay, guys, so we're 35.5 minutes in, and hopefully at this point you've got Windows 10 or even Windows 8.1 installed on your Chromebook. And if you made it this far, congratulations and thank you. I didn't think I was going to make it this far into the video. If you did and you're seeing this, well done. But that should cover basically everything. All of the steps, everything from all of the stuff you're going to need, the process of creating a bootable USB drive, backing up your ROM, doing everything we possibly can to cover all of the bases here. And I hope that I didn't miss anything. If I did, I will make updates either in the description down below or because of the length of the description, I have a feeling this one's going to be a long one. I will also make updates on my blog. There will be a link to that in the description below as well, so that you can go and make sure that you've got all of the up-to-date information for all of everything that's happened here and any changes or updates that I need to make. So if you found the video helpful, it would mean a lot to me if you would do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, all of the normal stuff. There will also be some links in the description as well on my blog post for other ways that you can support the channel, whether it's through Patreon, PayPal, and any of those other different types of things are great ways to help support the channel as well. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. As always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.